Yo guys, Vision here back with more Marvel Rivals content. Today's video will be showing you the best DPS gameplay for each individual duelist, the 8th episode of my new Lord series on the channel, and this episode will be for Namor, showing you the best gameplay possible. Now to remind you guys, in case you haven't seen the previous episodes on this channel, the catch of this series is that I have to earn the Lord icon on each of the heroes in this game to be shown in this series before I can even upload them to the channel. So as you can imagine, this will take some time to complete, but we're making good progress and I'm always up for the challenge. And in this video, I'll give you my advice on how best to use the hero, the strengths and weaknesses along the way in the journey, the do's and the don'ts from my own experiences, as well as any tips that I've learned along the way on both the character, using him, as well as just generally for also how best to earn the Lord icon in the most efficient and fastest ways. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first things first, in case you guys aren't aware of this series and how the format of these episodes work, this is not a guide on the character and how to use the abilities and what they do and all that sort of stuff. If you guys are looking for that, that is linked in the description below and already on my channel. It's made separately for any newer players or returning players who maybe don't know how to use this character. But for you, anyone that's been around in this series so far, or for anyone new, this is more of an overview of the character and how the journey went for me getting the character to Lord and how I would rank them based on my own experiences and sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the character and so on. So obviously Namor in this game is a duelist. He is a counter dive expert, arguably the #1 best sort of counter dive heroes in the entire game. And what I mean by that is if there's any setup or a team comp where you're playing against like a Spider-Man or you're playing against a Black Panther, whatever it may be, Magic, Psylocke, this is the best character that you could have in your arsenal, especially as a duelist main, in order to mitigate their effectiveness or completely counter them. He is a strong hero in this game that in previous seasons, of course, shared the team ability with the likes of Luna Snow and Hulk in earlier seasons, and of course in most recent seasons, where he gets the Gamma or the sort of Ice team ability. And this is a hero I fell in love with very early doors because I cannot personally stand that dive meta. If you guys aren't new to this channel and you already guys, if you've seen many series or episodes on the channel already from me playing Marvel Rivals, you guys will already know that I am not a fan of dive heroes. Of course, I understand why they're in the game. I completely agree with the fact that they are in the game. I just don't like the people that play them purely because of the sort of elemental factors or the environmental factors involved with the sort of aspect of players not understanding the change. They will change from a Star-Lord to a Black Panther to a Spider-Man to a Magic, whatever it may be, but they won't realize that that's not the problem. The problem is the sort of style of which you are playing, and that goes for both people on my team or against me. And of course, if you're playing Namor and you have people not changing and they're just constantly trying to dive, you are going to feast and have a completely fun game for the most part, to say the least, especially if you know what you're doing and how to use this character. Now, he of course can be used from a range perspective, which we'll get into in a second with regards to the system, the meta, how you want to use him, as well as a flanking style character who is really effective at picking off those squishy targets, especially those stretches. Now, I would say in terms of system and meta, he is extremely viable almost against every single team comp in the game. He works in most systems, both on your team and against different team comps. And as a counter dive player, you just need to understand your role and what your priorities are, especially as a Namor player, a Namor main, or a duelist player in general. Like I said, he can be used for ranged or for flanking as a duelist player. The team up makes him, of course, stronger in this game, where previously we've had great team abilities, given the extra squids. But of course, generally, with this being taken away in recent seasons, he is not going to be as effective because he has pretty much been the hands down #1, if not top 3 best counter dive players in the entire game ever since he has arrived in Marvel Rivals. And I'd say all around, the team up abilities are really effective, but generally he can be used really effectively if you know what you're doing, positioning your squids and all that sort of stuff. Generally along the game, in my journey getting him to Lord, I had about 20 hours on this character. He is one of the most enjoyable characters as a Vanguard main. This is coming from someone who plays mainly tank. I can stand by saying that this is one of the most entertaining characters that you can play, especially if you enjoy shutting down dive heroes. I've had people in my game come into quick play and just complain and moan that I've gone Namor because they're playing dive, and it's like, the only question you'll ask yourself is, am I going to put up with this dive pressure, or am I going to show those guys who is boss and go to their counter? Because that is what you're meant to do in games like this. It is a hero shooter. You are meant to adjust and you're meant to change your team composition and your hero based on the other team, because that's how you are effective. Of course, in quick play, maybe you don't do that because it's just a gentleman's agreement, but for the most part, I do not like playing against Black Panthers or Spider-Man players, so this is the perfect hero that you should have in your arsenal, especially if you are a duelist main. Like I'm saying, this is one of the best counter dive heroes in the entire game, even with the recent changes with the team ability being nerfed or taken away. And even in competitive, playing at the high GM and Celestial level, I have managed to play this character many different times, being super effective when needed, especially playing Duelist. Like I said, I'm usually a Vanguard main, but anytime I need to go Duelist, this is one of my comfort picks. I have different styles or different main Duelists that I would try and go to for different purposes, depending on, of course, the different team comp. But like in this gameplay, you'll see many dive heroes I'm coming across, and that is where I'm going to rack up a lot of kills, because they're going to be less effective by having constant aggro by well-placed squids in different areas for different reasons. reasons. Now, as for his strengths and weaknesses, I'd say the squids are his largest strength. How you place them, using the two together and timing them are all key factors in understanding how to maximize his damage output, focusing on squishy targets, utilizing the squids, placing them in key areas where you can deal out a crazy amount of sort of burst DPS to a squishy, where they leave no time to react for that player, especially the likes of a Cloak and Dagger, who can quickly Terror Cape away or whatever it may be. If you can try and get them out of the game quicker, you're going to leave your team in a better advantage by winning the team fights, by taking out those priority targets and leaving your chances sort of winning games in a much better scenario. Now, the timing of the ult is also a strength, I would say. Combining that with damage buffs such as Lunar Snow or Rocket Ultimates, when using that, will maximize his damage for one-hit combos and completely obliterate the entire point when you're playing objective game modes. As well as that, the damage output on this character is sort of using the squids makes him a really high damage sort of dealing duelist, especially when you are precise and landing the trident sort of attacks as well. The team up abilities in previous seasons have made him more viable. Like I said, he is almost overpowered, which is why the sort of nerfs and taking away those team ups have come into play. In quick play, I'd say you'll often frustrate other teams in previous seasons when you go Hulk and Namor. That was like a typical thing that you would do if you're really tilted, or you would see another team do that because you're playing a good dive hero, whatever it may be. It was almost like Marvel Rivals etiquette, or sort of just courtesy of not being scummy, is I guess what some people have said. But like I said, if you enjoy using Namor, it's not up to you whether your other teammate plays Hulk, or if you like playing Hulk and your other teammate goes Namor. It's not really down to you, of course, unless you're stacking and you're playing with a friend and you both do it. Then I guess shame goes out the window and you don't really care. But it was just a known thing that I thought was funny, definitely worth mentioning. As I said, for his weaknesses, he's fairly squishy in itself. I'd say because of his sort of low HP, he definitely is easy to snipe, especially when out positioned or poorly positioning yourself. And using awareness is really key for a character like this, especially using those squids. But I'd say also his ult is definitely situational, and it's definitely a good team ultimate. It usually baits out an enemy strategist ultimate, or it's just effective at slowing down the enemy team. But just on its own, I wouldn't say it's that good individually. It's fairly average in comparison to other duelists with the likes of Winter Soldier and whatever it may be. But I'd say when you compare it or combine it with the likes of a Rocket or Luna damage buff, it is really effective. Like I said earlier, the survivability of the character also isn't great. Although he has that bubble ability, he's not really that mobile and lacks a quick escape. He has no like immediate dash ability where you can evade and get to safety. So I would say that is definitely one of his biggest weaknesses, which is kind of why you want to sort of sit behind other teammates. And in order to be effective at flanking, I would say you're more reliant on your teammates being good on the front line. So if you don't have good vanguards, you can't really go around flanking. So just as a general tip, I would say don't spend your time flanking just to get some kills over and over again if your frontline players are constantly diving because they're having too much pressure, whatever it may be. So just as a general tip, as this character, I'd say definitely consider who your teammates are, how they're playing in terms of how you want to play this character, whether you want to sit behind your frontline players, your Doctor Stranges, your Magnetos, where it may be, and then utilize those squids from a range perspective in order to actually pile on a load of damage. However, if you want to play some flanking playstyle, make sure you're aware if your teammates keep dying and you only keep flanking, you are going to be the problem. So just consider that in case you guys aren't aware, because I've seen lots of players say, I'm a good flanking Namor, whatever it may be. You'll get your 1 or 2 kills, but the rest of your team keeps dying, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's because you're leaving them in vulnerable situations and you're not really utilizing the right heroes. Just remember that you can hold yourself accountable even if your teammates aren't great, because you should, if you deem yourself a good player at this game, be able to carry your teammates to a degree. Of course, there is context that matters, but to a degree, I would say he is one of the best takeover characters in the game, especially because most people don't change off of dive. They will just stay dive heroes, and therefore you're going to be effective. Of course, in competitive, that completely changes, and of course, that is never going to be the case, but in competitive is slightly different. And of course, if you're at a high level anyway, you generally understand this is just the theme of games, how they play out, and when best to do certain things with the likes of Namor, or when best to change off the character in itself. I'd say as for do's and don'ts, he's really effective at dealing damage to multiple enemies at a single time, but I would definitely prioritize those squishy enemies, as I've said, giving yourself that numbers advantage in team fights, particularly focusing on supports. Maximizing your chances at winning team fights is really crucial, and by placing good squids in sort of good areas, whatever it may be, pressing the L2 button to focus those squids onto a target is really effective at picking them off early doors, dealing high burst DPS, and giving your chance give a higher chance at winning games. He's also not the best in close quarters or competent in 1v1 scenarios, so I'd definitely say avoid 1v1 scenarios against high health targets, especially the likes of Mr. Fantastic, The Thing, Thor, whatever it may be, unless of course you have that distance between the enemy, or you have 2 squids available where it gives you a bit more of a chance. But just generally, I'd say he's weaker in those scenarios, so just consider that as well. As for personal advice on experience and my own ranking, I'd say he's very fun to play. He's fairly easy to understand, with both being extremely effective at shutting down pesky dive heroes, but from my own experience, he can also be really good for flanking. But please, for the love of God, as I said, just remember and be aware of your surroundings. Leaving your teammates vulnerable without any counter dive presence can be sort of compromise your team. And although you'll look like you're top fragging, you'll drop the most kills or whatever in the score, and you'll then sit there and blame your teammates, if they don't have support, they're not going to be able to help you. So you got to remember, the support, the strategist players in this game are the most important. So keeping them alive is really important for Namor players, especially if they have dive players. Because of course, you can get as many picks on the other team supports as often as possible, but if yours are dying as well, then you're really having a negative or sort of neutral effect, meaning you're actually not benefiting your team whatsoever. I'd say in comparison to other duelists in this game, he is definitely arguably a top 5 duelist. It's someone that I think every duelist main should have in their bag, in case you guys need to go counter dive and slow down the likes of an Iron Fist or Black Panther, whatever it may be, because this is something that your supports will be grateful for if you can sort of shut them down and at least mitigate them at the very least. Stopping them from getting those picks is really crucial. And I'd also just say in comparison to other duelists, like I said, he is definitely a top 5 in my opinion, because he's just so effective in most team comps, and I guess also most team comps as well, being good from range, being good at taking on sort of dive heroes, as well as just multiple damage, also high damage burst DPS as well. Just all around, I'd say he's a good character. There are definitely other duelists you could argue are better, but this is not what the video's purpose is for. I would just say all around, he's definitely someone you should have in your bag. And I guess that leads me on to another point I was going to summarize at the end of the video with regards to how you should use certain characters and playstyles. He is a character I think that every player in this game should understand how to use to a degree. Whether you use him or just know how to play against him, that's the important part, because in every game there are different playstyles. We have divers, we have brawlers, we have shielding style players, we have ranged players, we have close quarter players, whatever it may be. You need to understand counters in this game to be really effective, especially in competitive. So there are certain sort of counter dive heroes, there are also anti-dive heroes who can't be dove on, but there are good counter dive heroes, characters you go to stop those likes of that sort of dive heroes in themselves, like I said all throughout this video, and he just happens to be one of the best, if not the #1 best in the game, especially in previous seasons where he's had the team abilities which make him more effective. And I would just say all around, this is a character that most people, especially if you're a duelist main, should have in your bag in case you need to swap to them as an alternative to your team comp, because in case it doesn't work out, whether you go to a Winter Soldier or you go to a dive setup and they have a different setup itself, if you can't play a Penny or you can't play a Namor or a Mantis or whatever it may be to slow down dive heroes, this is going to be a problem for you, especially in winning situations. So I'd say just understand how to use counter dive heroes is a really good advantage, especially for both your team and just winning games in this game in itself. And as for Lord, I would say in order to get him to Lord in the most efficient way and most effective way, his hero specific requirement, in case you guys aren't aware, every character in this game has a hero specific requirement. So if you're a Vanguard or a Duelist, or if you're a Strategist, they all have one specific item that is applicable to every character in the Lord journey, which is of course minutes played, and then depending on the role will determine of course which way you want to go about them, whether you're dealing damage, you're healing teammates, or you're blocking damage. And then of course every single character has their own sort of individual and sort of unique hero specific requirement, and for Namor it is simply placing squids, so hiding them in certain spots, creating off angles to extend the life duration for maximizing damage output is really crucial, definitely more efficient in earning that Lord icon. If you can have your squids doing more damage quicker, you will get more damage for a duelist player, therefore you're going to get Lord quicker. And also placing your squids down as frequently as possible is also really effective, because the more squids you place, the more quicker you'll earn that sort of hero specific one, and therefore the quicker you'll get to Lord. So just bear that in mind. And also generally say, as I do in all of the videos, make sure you rotate your heroes. I do not agree with people that just stay the same hero and main and focus that one person if they're going to be effective at trying to grind out Lord. Of course, if you're just playing that hero, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're trying to grind out Lord, there are definitely more effective ways at getting that, and that is by switching out your hero. That could also mean your role as well, but generally just change up the hero every different sort of game, because being the same hero, whether it's a Namor or a Spider-Man or whatever it may be, you are going to find games where you're going to be less effective. So it's also good to have multiple on the go, whether, like I said, that's a different role or just multiple different duelists, whatever it may be, because of course there are so many duelists in the game, which I'm grinding myself at this minute. And I would say generally, if you're going to be more effective, they're just going to be games where Namor isn't going to be the best pick that you could go for. So trying to understand who works best, when and why, these are all good factors I would also share for anyone that is grinding out Lord on certain characters, whether it may be you're just going for Lord on all of the duelists, or whether you're going for it like myself on every character in the game. This is something I would definitely cannot stress enough in the importance of how effective you can be. And I'd say in summary, Namor is going to be a really fun character to use, and also understanding his mechanics is super easy. Managing those cooldowns is definitely the key, along with landing your shots, being precise, and if you're a duelist main, you will likely enjoy this hero to say the least. I would say this is one of the most enjoyable characters in all of this game, a top 10 pick for me in characters that I would say for both comfort, but just generally as well as just enjoying throughout. I'd say if you guys have enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any comments or thoughts about playing as Namor or any cool clips that you want to share, please let me know down below in the comments and I'll go back to you. I'm interested to hear any thoughts of any other Namor players who have got him to Lord, or just generally along the way to help out any newer players, or of course players like myself who have got him to Lord. If you've enjoyed the video and found this useful, do not forget to like and subscribe. As I said, it'll massively help me out. I'm a small creator and I put a lot of time into both grinding out these characters as a massive challenge to try and get every character in the game Lord. So if you've enjoyed the video and found this useful, drop a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. I'm Vision Shen. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.